Welcome to Module 2, the Ecological and Business Imperative for Sustainability. In this session, we focus on one of the most important questions in the sustainability journey, and that is, why does this even matter? It is important to keep the why at the forefront of our mind, especially in a world facing climate breakdown, resource scarcity, and biodiversity loss. This section explains why embedding sustainability is no longer just a moral choice, but rather it's a strategic imperative. To truly understand sustainability, we need to zoom out and see the bigger system we operate within. The economy doesn't exist in isolation. It is entirely nested within and dependent on the natural environment. Every product, every service, every job depends on healthy ecosystems. So when ecosystems are depleted or destabilized, it's not just an environmental problem. It's a business risk and a societal crisis. This is what we call the ecological imperative. It's the foundation for understanding why sustainability is urgent, not optional. So we have mentioned that the economy doesn't exist in isolation. So when ecosystems are depleted or destabilized, it's not just an environmental problem, it's also a business risk and a societal crisis as well. This is what we call the ecological imperative. It's the foundation for understanding why sustainability is urgent. This doesn't add legitimacy to the issue, but it just helps translate the problem in business terms. Let's break that down. At the heart of this ecological imperative is the concept of natural capital. Think of natural capital as Earth's stock of natural assets, such as forests, soil, water, air, and biodiversity. These assets provide us with ecosystem services. These include clean air and water, food and raw materials, climate regulation, soil fertility, and pollination. Without these services, life as we know it and business as we run it wouldn't exist. Yet many of these systems are being degraded faster than they can regenerate. That's where the risk lies, not just for nature, but obviously for our economy and society too. Ecosystem services are usually grouped into 4 categories. Let's briefly look at each one. Provisioning services, these are the tangible products we harvest from nature, like food, fresh water, timber, and fuel. These are the easiest to measure, but they're only sustainable if ecosystems are healthy enough to replenish them. Then we got regulating services. These are the invisible processes that keep systems in balance: carbon absorption by forests, water purification by wetlands, and even pollination by insects. We barely notice them until they fail. Next is cultural services. These are the non-material benefits we gain from nature, like recreation, aesthetic inspiration, and spiritual connection. These enrich our lives and shape entire cultures and identities. Finally, supporting services are the foundational processes like nutrient cycling, soil formation, and photosynthesis that enable all other services to function. They're the ecological infrastructure that holds everything together, and together these services define the ecological conditions under which any business and any society can thrive. Think of it as the very fabric that holds the word as we know it together. Let's start with the most visible category: provisioning services, the things nature provides directly and tangibly. These are the goods we extract and use every day. Food, from crops and livestock to fish and wild plants. Fresh water for drinking, sanitation, and agriculture. Raw materials like timber, fiber, and medicinal plants. Fuel, such as wood, charcoal, and biofuels. These are the resources that drive agriculture, construction, energy, and much more. They're traded in global markets, and they're at the center of our economy. But here's the catch: provisioning services depend on ecosystem health. If we degrade the ecosystems that produce them, these resources can't regenerate. Now let's move from the visible to the invisible regulating services. These are the natural processes that keep life on Earth in balance. Climate regulation, forests, oceans, and wetlands absorb carbon dioxide and store carbon. Air quality, trees filter pollutants and improve urban health. Water. Purification, wetlands, and soils act as natural filters. Pollination, bees, birds, and bats make food systems possible. Disease control. Healthy ecosystems limit the spread of viruses and pests. These services are often overlooked, until something goes wrong. When pollinator populations decline, crop yields drop. When forests are cleared, floods become more frequent. What's the bottom line, you might ask? Nature regulates risk, and when we damage those regulatory systems, the costs to business, to health, to economies, are enormous. The third category is less tangible, but just as important, cultural ecosystem services. These are the non-material benefits we receive from our relationship with nature: recreation, hiking, ecotourism, time in nature. Boost mental and physical health, spiritual and religious value. Many cultures link landscapes to sacred practices. Aesthetic inspiration, nature shapes our art, literature, and sense of identity. Education, ecosystems are classrooms for science, culture, and traditional knowledge. These benefits aren't easily priced or traded, but they're essential to human well-being. In fact, studies show that access to green space improves mental health, community cohesion, and even productivity. Cultural services remind us nature isn't just a resource, it's a source of meaning, belonging, and connection, and those values must be part of how we define sustainability. Finally, we come to supporting services, the unseen backbone of all ecosystems. These are the fundamental processes that make everything else possible. Nutrient cycling, the way elements like nitrogen and phosphorus are reused in ecosystems. Photosynthesis, plants capturing sunlight to generate energy. Soil formation, which underpins food systems and carbon storage. Habitat provision, creating safe spaces for biodiversity to thrive. These services don't show up directly in the market. You don't buy photosynthesis. But without them, nothing else works. They're the ecological operating system. And if we compromise them, we compromise every system built on top of them, including agriculture, water, health, and climate. Let's now step back and see the bigger picture. Our economy is not separate from the environment it's nested within it. We rely on nature's inputs, we build systems on top of them, and we generate outputs, including waste, pollution, and emissions. Here's how it flows. Inputs. Raw materials, like timber, minerals, and fresh water. Regulating services like clean air and stable climate. Core systems. Agriculture, transport, energy, and production, all shaped by policy, technology, and markets. Outputs, carbon emissions, habitat destruction, pollution, and biodiversity loss, which then disrupt ecosystems and threaten human well-being. This is a feedback loop. When ecosystems degrade, society and business suffer, and that creates further instability. So sustainability isn't just about being ethical, it's about recognizing that the natural system sets the rules, and we must redesign our food, energy, and mobility systems to stay within those ecological boundaries. So what happens when we consistently demand more from nature than it can regenerate? That's called ecological overshoot, and it's where we are heading to. Ecosystems are stretched beyond their limits, and we're seeing the consequences: droughts and floods, crop failures, collapsing fish stocks, wildfires, and pandemics. These aren't isolated incidents, they're symptoms of a system under pressure. Here's the thing: we are living beyond our ecological means. The services we rely on are being depleted faster than they can recover. And the risk is not just ecological, but it's also social, economic, and political. When ecosystems collapse, supply chains fail, communities are displaced, and businesses lose their ability to operate. Overshoot leads to tipping points, thresholds beyond which systems can't bounce back. And once we cross those, the changes can be abrupt, irreversible, and catastrophic. To visualize the balance we need, let's look at a powerful model, donut economics, developed by Kate Rayworth. Picture two concentric rings. Between these two rings is the safe and just space for humanity, a zone where both people and planet can thrive. If we fall below the inner ring, we see poverty, injustice, and unmet human needs. If we overshoot the outer ring, we destabilize Earth's life support systems. The goal of sustainability is to live in that sweet spot within the donut, where we meet everyone's needs without breaching the planet's limits. Here's where we stand today, and it's not encouraging. The concept of planetary boundaries, developed by the Stockholm Resilience Center, defines 9 critical Earth system processes that must remain within safe limits. These include climate change, biodiversity loss, freshwater use, land system change, chemical pollution. In 2009, we had crossed 3 boundaries. By 2023, we've crossed 6 out of 9, and we're accelerating. This is not just about crossing lines on a chart. It's about entering a zone of risk, instability, and uncertainty, where feedback loops and cascading effects become more likely. The further we push past these boundaries, the harder it becomes to return, and the more fragile our social and economic systems become. Here's the hard truth. With no planet stability, no business as usual. You can't run a business without clean air, fertile soil, or stable climate. You can't grow GDP on a dying planet. Look at the chart on this slide. In 2009, 3 boundaries breached. In 2015, 4 have been breached. And in 2023, 6 have been breached. This isn't just academic. It's a pulse check. And it shows we're on a path toward systemic destabilization. And here's the kicker. It's not one crisis at a time. It's multiple overlapping crises happening together. We are no longer dealing with single issues. We are living in what experts call a polycrisis. This means environmental breakdown, economic fragility, social unrest, political instability, all happening at once and all reinforcing each other. It's not a chain reaction. It's a web of interactions. For example, land degradation leads to food insecurity, which drives migration, which fuels political tension. Climate shocks disrupt supply chains, which affect prices, which destabilize economies. And this is what makes today's challenges so complex. We're not just solving one problem, we're trying to fix an entire system that's unraveling at multiple points. That's why old approaches no longer work. We need systemic thinking, cross-sector solutions, and collaborative action at a whole new scale. For most of modern history, science and business have relied on a method called reductionism, breaking things down into parts to understand how they work. It's a method that gave us incredible progress, but reductionism has limits. It fails when applied to complex, interconnected systems like ecosystems, economies, or societies. Why? Because in complex systems, the parts lose meaning when taken out of context. You can't understand a rainforest by analyzing one tree. You can't solve climate change by focusing only on carbon. So what do we do instead? We shift from analysis to synthesis, from breaking things apart to seeing how they connect. That's where systems thinking begins. Systems thinking starts with the whole. It asks, what patterns are we seeing? How do different parts interact? Where are the feedback loops and tipping points? This mindset is powerful because it reflects how the world actually works. It helps us see that deforestation isn't just about trees. It's also about carbon cycles, indigenous rights, food systems, and commodity markets. Or that plastic pollution isn't just a waste issue. It's linked to oil extraction, product design, consumer culture, and marine ecosystems. Systems thinking helps us move beyond symptoms and start addressing root causes. And in a world of accelerating complexity, that shift is essential. Let's apply this systems lens to what we're facing today. What you're looking at here is a conceptual map of global destabilization, inspired by the work of systems theorist Fritjof Capra. Notice, it's not a straight line, it's not cause and effect, it's a web where environmental degradation, economic pressure, social inequality, and political instability reinforce each other. For example, overconsumption drives deforestation. Deforestation accelerates climate change. Climate stress impacts migration and food security. Political instability follows, and so the cycle deepens. This is what systems thinkers call complex causality. There's no single villain, no silver bullet, which means our solutions must also be multidimensional, cross-disciplinary, and deeply collaborative. Let's say it clearly. These crises are not isolated, they are interconnected, interdependent, and intensifying. And that means traditional tools, such as single-issue policies, linear planning, siloed departments, aren't enough anymore. What we need is a systems literacy, a way of seeing how challenges overlap and how interventions ripple through a wider system. For example, soil degradation isn't just an agricultural issue. It touches food security, carbon storage, biodiversity, water cycles, and local economies. If we only fix the fertilizer use, we miss the deeper dynamics. But if we restore soil health as a system, we unlock benefits across agriculture, climate, and livelihoods. That's the power of seeing the whole. And to circle back, here's where it gets real for business. There is no economy without nature. Natural capital, the soil, water, biodiversity, and stable climate is the foundation of economic productivity. Every sector depends on it. Agriculture needs fertile land and pollinators. Energy depends on water and weather stability. Tourism relies on thriving ecosystems. Even tech needs minerals from healthy landscapes. But when we degrade these systems, we're not just hurting the environment. We're undermining the inputs that business and society rely on. Pollution, carbon emissions, and land degradation are no longer just externalities, they're systemic risks. To address this, we need more than tweaks. We need to evolve from market failure thinking to systems thinking and start building economies that work within, not against, ecological limits. Let's end on a note of urgency and opportunity. What we're experiencing isn't just a climate crisis or a biodiversity crisis, it's what some are calling a meta-disruption. That means systemic transformation, a moment where the breakdown of old models forces us to rethink how we live, produce, consume, and collaborate. It's not about fixing one sector, it's about reimagining the entire system from the ground up. That might sound overwhelming, but here's the hope. This disruption also opens a window for bold redesign, renewable energy instead of fossil dependence, regenerative agriculture instead of extractive farming, circular economies instead of linear waste, purpose-driven finance instead of short-term profit. Sustainability isn't just about risk reduction, it's about unleashing the next generation of opportunity, one that aligns prosperity with planetary health. Let's wrap up this module with a clear message. Natural capital is the foundation of every other form of capital. We depend on ecosystem services not just for survival, but for every aspect of modern life. But we are an ecological overshoot, breaching planetary boundaries and destabilizing the systems that support us. Models like donut economics remind us that true prosperity balances human needs with planetary limits, and in the face of polycrisis, isolated fixes won't cut it. We need systemic, integrated solutions. That's where systems thinking becomes our most important skill, helping us see the interconnections and act with clarity, collaboration, and courage. The road ahead will be messy. But it's also full of possibility. The systems around us weren't designed to be sustainable, but they can be redesigned. And that's where you come in.